every time I would ask people to change, they'd get very, very defensive. And they're like, well, I'm doing what I was always told to do. I was like, I understand that, but we've learned that what we're doing isn't working. And so I started using the term redirection. We're redirecting you a different way. We learned something. We're going this way now. And it really kind of helped shape that organization.
Step into the world of success with Your Brand Amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. Jon Bassford, I'm really excited to dive into conversation with you today. You are an optimist. You use a lot of exclamation points, but in a very positive way in your writing. And you have a book out that's an Amazon bestseller, and it's about using creativity and curiosity in leadership. I'm curious to understand why curiosity. What was it about that word, that ideal, that propelled you into doing what you do now and helping organizations with organizational structure, workflows, production, ops, things that are the backbone and so vitally important to all of us?
Sure. So, I have to admit here that curiosity wasn't something that I thought about most of my childhood, high school, college, early career. About, 10, 12 years ago, I was in a transition. I did what most people did, is dust off the digital Rolodex LinkedIn and started networking with people because I was looking for another job. And someone introduced me to a colleague of theirs who is an academic who specializes in helping people to define their superpower. And that's the first time it came back curiosity, after some interviews and intake forms, all that type of stuff. But it didn't really resonate with me at the time. I'm someone who I'm curious and love, personal development assessments. So I enjoyed doing it and learning about it, but it didn't really change anything. But fast forward, I was working with a branding company, did a deep dive into who I am and what I do and why I do what I do. And curiosity came up again. And so that's why I really kind of took note and started thinking about, again, even back to childhood of sitting around the adults and engaging in conversations, to high school, taking advantage of opportunities that came my way and just really diving into everything. Then in my career, I've always been a person, a little bit of a change agent. I come into a role and my first thing I do is get engulfed into what it is that the organization does, but then start, picking it apart a little bit, like, how can we make this better? And when I really started thinking about that, that's really been the through line for my career and what I do and how I've helped organizations create efficient and effective operations, create cultures that allow that to happen as well, and really work to help organizations and leaders grow.
You have a lot of letters behind your name as well. I want to point that out. So to think that operations became the area where you got really excited after seeing JD, MBA, CAE, that doesn't naturally lead me to, this is a guy who's going to turn your operations around. Can you talk a little bit about that journey into, you teased it out a little bit, going from corporate into digital, trying to figure out your ikigai, if you will?
Yeah. So after law school, which is where the JD comes from, didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't sure I wanted to practice law. And I ended up falling into working for a legal organization. I was a member of a law school, which led to a great career in association management, which is where the CAE comes from, Certified Association Executive. But through that, it actually, my first job, I was in the kind of the more membership program, chapter leadership development side of the house, but began taking on internal operational roles. So I was switching jobs. I said, no, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to build my career around. And that's actually how I also got into startups. Is the next association I worked for was a tech trade association that was a startup that worked with startups. So I got a double immersion into the startup world, and really working for that startup, I was the fourth employee hired. And so I had to build all the systems and structures for operations. And it gave me a very unique perspective into how to do that. From there, I went on to be a COO for an organization. And then when I switched to consulting, helping launch, manage, and analyze operations for growth, I've really worked for both kind of 50-50 for-profit and nonprofit.
And have you mostly stuck in the tech world, or have you found a couple of areas that are really exciting for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I have to lean on like what I've done. That's really been exciting. I love the association work I do and the meaningful missions that they have, but there's just also something very, very exciting about the tech world. I've had the privilege of working for several tech startups that were venture backed, as well as some nonprofits with global reach. So it's really, I know to most people it sounds weird to have that duality of for profit, nonprofit, but in the operations side of the house, it really is just all about how do we create the most efficient, effective operations to drive the results, and that's what I focus on.
Well, and I will fully admit, when I moved back to LA many years ago and started a PR firm, it was very organic. It was during the pandemic, just clients, onboarded staff. And only after I was operating for a little while did I say, hey, we really need to look at our procedures. I really need to make sure that our profit margins are where they should be, and was able to map back who's working on which accounts, how much is that actually costing me? Is that fully covered? What are our operating procedures for public relations versus social media versus website, every little piece of the work that we were doing. And that's obviously something I should have been thinking about before, but I didn't know what I didn't know. I'm a very organic person, not as, structured in those ways. However, in the podcast world, I have a lot more structure in terms of my operations. And I've seen that I've been able to keep on podcasting successfully, keep this, have my team know what to do, whether I'm on vacation or away for business or whatever. It's made such a big difference. So I'd love to hear from you. What are the things that surprised you most going into these organizations that they did have or that they didn't have, or that they didn't know what they didn't know?
Yeah, I mean, one of the areas that I can step into organization and kind of tell right away what the mindset of the CEO and what that culture is like and what the operation is like is by looking at your accounting structure. To see, if the CEO wants to see the bill when it first comes in, when it gets approved, when it's ready to pay, every step of the way is the only person who will send out invoices. They don't trust anyone else to do it. When I see those type of things, it tells me that there's a lack of process and systems in place that the CEO trusts. And there's a culture element that where controls a little bit more. So that's one of the first areas where I can really, from a very quick way, dive in and see what's working, what's not working. And you made some great points, right? It's people don't often analyze, how long it takes to do something. And if everything is ad hoc, if everything is reactionary, you can't build that cadence. You can't judge how long are we working on this. Did we bill the client the right amount? Are we keeping our costs where they should be? Is the revenue on target? When you don't have those metrics that you can track because you don't have systems, you're just guessing and reacting all the time. And a lot of, you're not dissimilar to most CEOs and founders I work with. The structures and processes and internal operations is often the last place they invest, either for personnel outsourcing or even their mind share of being strategic, because they tend to focus on usually even areas of their own zone of genius, the product development, the marketing, the sales, the service, right? That's why they run the business and why they got started with it. And what happens is when you focus in those outward areas, but not the internal process and procedures, the CEOs and founders get sucked down into that, and they get stuck in there. And the number of times I worked with a founder by just changing a few process procedures that allow them to trust it, can free up 5, 10, 15 hours a week of their time that then goes towards that growth of the company.
Yeah. Do you have one or two favorite examples of companies you're able to go in and turn around pretty quickly?
Yeah. So I'll give two examples. One was a startup client recently, and I stepped in, and this is an organization that has a U.S. entity and a Greek entity. So 2 sets of accountants, 1 bookkeeper that's kind of serves as an accountant, 3 bank accounts, 2 sets of books. It was a mess. And I'm like, they were having problems with payments not being made, with duplicate payments. I'm like, it's because, and everyone saw everything. If a bill came in, it didn't matter who was going to eventually pay that bill. It went to every set of accountant, every set of books, everything. And then they had to figure that out later on, which one was going to pay it, which created, so I was able to step in quickly. It took a little bit of time, a couple memos, some conversations, but I was able to, the founder to see that you got to create this process. I know that you are worried about things like wire transfer fees and exchange rates, but that's the cost of doing business internationally. we need to figure out this process, and was able to adopt a new AP system as well as procedure that really simplified everything down for everyone involved and saved everyone, I'd say at least 4 or 5 people, 5 to 10 hours a week. Everybody. So that was one I could really quickly pinpoint the problem. Took a little while to convince the CEO to do it, but we got there. Another one was I was hired as a COO to help, be a change agent in an organization. And it was an organization that had been in decline for the last couple of years and had some cultural problems, and really had to go department by department and just reframe every department. It was a organization that had really been driven by micromanagement, by a culture of just kind of letting everyone do what they wanted to do.
Oh,
And I don't mean that in a positive way, right? It's a department over here wanted a software, they purchased it. Someone wanted a software here, they purchased it. And there was no cohesion in the organization at all, no cross-departmental functions and communication. And it really just led to a mess. And so I had to first kind of bring about a culture of change. And even doing that, I was noticing that every time I would ask people to change, they'd get very, very defensive. And they're like, well, I'm doing what I was always told to do. I was like, I understand that, but we've learned that what we're doing isn't working. And so I started using the term redirection. We're redirecting you a different way. We learned something. We're going this way now. And it really kind of helped shape that organization.
yeah, that was going to be my next question is, have you met resistance and what does that look like? So you answered that a little bit, but I'd love to hear also about when you started the organization. How hard was it to start to find clients, to get your name out there, your brand as the person who can provide these solutions for operations?
Sure. So I have to say that initially it actually was fairly easy for me. I luckily I initially started working at, launching operations and working as a fractional COO. And within my first year and a half, I had a full plate of clients to where I could not take on any more if I wanted. So but it all happened through word of mouth. Former bosses that were starting new organizations or businesses, other ones knowing someone else was. And so it really grew organically at first. Now that I've kind of with the book and the TEDx and retooling my business a little bit away from fractional CEO work into really diving into the processes and helping CEOs trust the process. We do an analysis initially. You got to know where you are to make the changes you need to make. And so with this new process, I'm going beyond my network. I'm reaching out. So been working with a branding company to kind of help me retool that. And we came up with in addition to, the Curious Leader brand, also Trust the Process brand. And really when, as you pointed out early on, when there aren't process procedures in place, everyone's just reacting, and it creates a lot of additional work, a lot of lack of clarity, and it slows down decision making. There's so many things by just not having these processes that you can trust. And also, as a change agent, I also am someone who build it, trust it, then break it. Right? We got to constantly be looking at, is what we're doing the best way. So I kind of look at things in a very 360 way.
How did the book and the TEDx talk come about? Which one came first, and how did you decide those were areas that would help you get your specific way of doing business, your curiosity out into the world and be able to share that message?
Yes. So after that second, brand person who's, got me to see curiosity as my superpower, I wrote the book quickly. I actually was writing 2 other books at the time. One more on a personal angle, which I actually published 3 weeks ago. It's on co-parenting. So definitely not really part of my brand, but it was more of a passion project for me. So the other book I was working on was the DIY Dilemma. And so when Curiosity hit, Curious Leader hit, I jumped in, wrote that book in 3 months. I mean, it was way faster than the other ones. Then when it came to the TEDx, I leaned back into the DIY Dilemma as a very universal appeal to, because a lot of times they don't want it just about business. They want it more universal. And so I leaned into the DIY Dilemma again, but brought the curiosity piece into that as the mechanism to break free from the DIY Dilemma.
Interesting. Can you unpack that a little bit for us, for those who haven't seen the TED Talk? Of course, we'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah. So, the story I begin with in the TEDx is talking about how I'm a Midwest guy, born and raised. I live on the East Coast now, but I am not a handy person. And that is, basically blasphemy for a Midwest guy who doesn't like to work outdoors and hammer and do home repair projects. And so when I bought my first home out here, like I fell into the DIY dilemma. I'm like, I'm going to save some money. I'm going to be a good Midwesterner and do my own projects. And what would happen every single time is I would waste the time and money and energy and still have to hire someone. And so it was a complete waste, but I was doing something I knew I should be doing and didn't want to be doing, but I fell into that trap. And we do that all the time. Moms, parents, suffering through kids on their own and leaders who think their ideas have to flourish and don't trust anyone else. We all fall into these traps of feeling that we have to do it ourselves. And our culture actually kind of wears as a badge of honor, right? That like, I'm grinding through, I'm suffering and falling on the sword. And that's what we're supposed to do as a society. But if we learn to be curious and open up and look at new possibilities, new strategies, new ways to get help, we can actually accomplish a lot more.
Yeah. And I want to say that there is such a through line between all of these topics: co-parenting, DIY dilemma. I'm from Kansas, so understand all of that, and curiosity and business leadership. Because in all of those situations, like you said, you have to know what your limits are. You have to know how to trust somebody, especially I know when it comes to our children. I'm also in a co-parent situation. So I see those parallels, and I see how building up trust or rebuilding trust, I guess, in those kind of personal relationships also can give you the skills in the business world to understand how to navigate difficult relationships, conversations.
Yeah, in the co-parenting book, I completely agree, because it definitely was kind of just a spark of curiosity between me and my ex-wife. Our relationship was great in the beginning, as most are, and then towards the end, there was a lot of animosity and anger and trash talking and all those typical things that happen. We didn't have a fairy tale ending initially, but the minute we decided to get divorced and settled, after the lawyers were involved and who got what, all that type of stuff, we really came together and said, we want to do co-parenting different. I was raised in a two-home environment growing up in your traditional, 80s model of mom had full custody, took care of all sick, all legal, all health, all medical, all schooling. And then you went and spent every other weekend at dad's house and had all fun. But there's no real parenting involved in that, right? Like, especially when we were younger, if we were really, really sick, we didn't even go to our dads. And we wanted to do it differently. We have pretty much 50-50 custody. And I started thinking about, what makes our relationship different than most co-parenting situations. And it's because too many parents put the emphasis on themselves. It's their time. It's their money. It's their this. It's their that. And so my book, The Co-Parenting Secret, it's not about you, brings that away from the parents and focuses on the kids. One quick example is, if you're in a co-parenting situation and your child wants to go to a stepbrother's birthday party on your time, it's a no, because it's my time. Whereas in our relationship, it's like, oh yeah, that's my son's relationship with his stepbrother. That's not my time. It's his time. If my ex-wife reached out to me and says, hey, I know it's your weekend, but my parents really want to have Henry for the weekend. I'm like, great. Like, grandparents' time is not my time or your time, it's his time. And that's really how we focus that. And that's really the theme of the book.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And that shows a lot of emotional intelligence in this relationship. And I also imagine, like it alluded to earlier, this is something you have to think about when you are a business owner and operator. It's your organization, but you have to take care of the people within it. You have to make sure that they're getting this, that they're upskilling, that they're feeling job satisfaction, that they feel like they have ownership over what they're doing. So it's not just about you, it's about the whole.
Yeah. One of my lines is, unless you're the lead singer of a one-person band, you have to bring along with you, right? There's no way around it. Most CEOs and founders, they get caught up in perks being the thing that makes a person stay in the organization and feel valued in the organization, salary raises, bonuses, benefits, but it's really having a voice to contribute. And that is, I think also one of those age difference things, that generational gaps, when it comes to the workplace today versus, 40 years ago, when the majority of people sat on a manufacturing line. We don't do that anymore. And so people want to contribute. They want to be engaged. When they see a problem in the organization, they want to be able to point it out. They have a new idea for the organization. They want to point it out, and creating an environment where that flourishes, but truly allows organization to move forward.
Yeah. Let's stay on that thread a little bit. There are so many changes happening really fast in the world of work, whether it's the economy, tariffs, digital nomads. So people maybe being from one country, or like myself, I am a dual citizen. So I think about things from two perspectives, and which country is going to be better for my business operations. What if I then want to live somewhere else in a third country for a while? What does that look like? And then, of course, we have artificial intelligence changing some of the ways that we do operations as well. How have all of these things helped shape how you help organizations and the way that you even look at your own?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I talk about curious leadership, I talk about three shifts. I've changed the nomenclature a little bit, but now I talk about what curiosity does is change the way we think, the way we work, the way we connect. And so, taking something as simple as AI, that's a mindset shift you have to make to adopt that into your business, to use it for yourself, to encourage your staff to use it, to get rid of the fear and uncertainty that often accompanies that, and be able to adopt that new technology that most people out there, and I agree with, that if you're not using AI, you are eventually going to be left behind. Start using it now in little ways. Help it review contracts or longer documents, so you're not sifting through a 40-page document, but having it analyze it for you. Help you start with drafting things. Help you come up with new ideas, and then you translate that into how we work, which is that I like to look at the operational curiosity as constantly looking at what we're doing and how we're doing it, why we're doing it, and whether it's achieving the intended results as efficiently and effectively as possible, which is how I define operational excellence. And it's kind of this idea that started in the software development world called agile development, where they constantly are tweaking and changing their software while everything's still live. They're doing it in the background, and that's what we need to be doing for our entire organizations. And then we've already talked about the culture piece, is how do you bring your team into that? How do you infuse your team into bringing new ideas to grow the company, to think bigger, to point out problems, and to define the best ways to operate?
Yeah. Nice. So obviously you're helping figure out what people might want to implement out of, there's so many tools. I think it can be overwhelming for organizations. And so, but taking it back to the basics, right, of what's going to be most efficient, and then determining, is it a tool like AI? Is it a human? Is it a little mix of both? Makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Like my big thing for startups, small nonprofits, small businesses is to keep it simple. I think a lot of business owners and founders want to jump to the big software like Salesforce, NetSuite, Office 365, which, we all think growing up, it's Microsoft Excel. No, it is so much more now. It's an enterprise system, which really helped spur Microsoft's growth after 2013. Because they brought in a CEO that was championing curiosity amongst its staff and leadership. But, just focusing on software and tools that integrate with each other, that reduce the amount of administration you put into things, and the time you put into things, that's really need to be focused the most in helping move the needle forward, to give back your time, as well as making sure that everything's running properly and compliant to what needs to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Curiosity is a great value for you. It's what you based your business on, your brand. Is it something that you look for in the team members that you bring on? And do you have specific questions that you ask them, or how do you determine whether they're going to be the right fit and that they have that curious mindset, if so?
Yeah. So, one way I kind of look at the curiosity is really looking to hire people that have problem solving skills. People, one of the best things someone can do for their career is to never say the term, I don't know. What you would do is say, let me look into that. Go do your research, jump into ChatGPT and find out the answer. And sometimes the answer is, I can't do it, but you're providing a solution. This is not something we should do in-house. We need to hire this person. We need to do this. This is the best way to do it. And so you're still providing a solution. You're not saying, I don't know. So that's what I really look for when I'm hiring people in creating that culture. One of the big questions I ask is if I'm asking you to do something and you don't know how to do it, how do you respond? What do you do? And if they give a scenario where they, say what I say, let's go research it. And what if you decide you can't do it, right? I dive deep into not just what they do, but their communication back to me. because I want to be able to trust my staff that they're working hard, they're thinking things through, they're bringing solutions to me, not problems. And so one aspect is, having the confidence to go research and work on your own, but then also having the confidence to communicate that back up, even if it's something I don't want to hear. And I think that's really been a driver in my career. My bosses have always trusted me. Like if there is something wrong, you're going to hear it from me, not from someone else. Even if I made the mistake. And so having that transparent way of working and having a problem solving mindset goes a long way.
Yeah. And you alluded to this a little bit earlier, how there was a shift after your TED Talk and your book in what you focused on in your business. Did you see that those two things brought in different types of businesses or an abundance of new business in general? Or was it just the fact that you got these two ideas, the DIY and your curiosity out into the world, that made you go, I see that there's another opportunity here?
Yeah, so I'd say the part that the TEDx and book spurred the most was speaking. I do keynote speaking. I also have developed some workshops that are more interactive. With some are like physical tasks of building things. Some are more verbal and communication around a round table. But I've actually had a surge of people bringing me out to speak for the organizations, for leadership conferences, that sort of thing, because it usually spurred from, hey, my boss read your book. Do you want to come out and talk about it? And so like I have something in February coming up with a boutique restaurant and hotel chain. And they want to have me do a fireside chat with the CEO and then do 2 workshops on curiosity. So that's the biggest piece. I think from my goal is that from these speaking opportunities and workshops, that's going to, ignite some fire in individuals to really look at the organization and what's working, not working, which then the consulting will come in as well. But I've also launched a curious leader assessment that analyzes, leadership archetype and whether or not that reaches the level of curiosity, and also a curious culture assessment that really helps bring things towards a curious culture mindset that really opens up that dialogue of allowing people to speak up and speak out and be participating individuals in the organization.
Well, that's one thing that really struck me when I was looking at your website is I sometimes teach a leadership class I teach grad school. And for the digital media management master's program, we have an entire course on leadership, digital leadership. And I always try to extend, okay, we're going through this, and this is your material, but what other types of things can I get students to think about? And curious leadership is definitely one I want to add to that. So I love that you have a profile people can go through, can see where they are, on a scale, hopefully get some advice from you, figure out if it's the right time to work with your organization.
Yeah. So we're in the middle of some rebranding here, but hopefully we have those assessments up and going. Right now, I'm kind of using them as additional add-ons for my speaking and workshops, but we're going to have those a little more public in the coming weeks here, and it really can be a very low cost engagement for people who are curious about being curious from both the leadership side and the culture side. Then from there, hopefully that sparks some thoughts in the organization about changes that they can make. And obviously if we could help bring about some of those changes operationally, we'd be glad to help.
Nice. And what are things that people should be thinking about when they are starting a new organization, or, they're in the first few years and they say, we really need to start asking the right questions and moving towards being curious, thinking about our operations?
Yes, I think one thing that is often overlooked is be afraid to look dumb, right? Like some of the biggest problems I've solved is because I'm willing to look dumb to people, right? I'm willing to like I don't understand this. Can you explain it to me further? Simon Sinek even has a video where he talks about this. He was invited to some boardroom meeting of some company, and they're all listening to some consultant, and the consultant finished, and Simon Sinek, no one said anything. Simon Sinek raised his hand and said, "Hey, I don't get any of this. Like, I don't understand this at all." And one by one, the rest of the executives all like, "Yeah, I don't get it either." But they're all too afraid to look dumb, right? So they're all probably going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on whatever this was, and probably actually never even have it operationalized because they didn't get it. And so being willing to look dumb, right? And, but I mean, we just be able to ask deep questions and say when you don't understand something. When you're vetting two software companies, payroll company A, payroll company B, use what you learn from each other, play each other against each other, let them be the experts. You don't have to be the expert in everything. You just have to get enough information to make a sound decision.
Yeah. I think that's something that we're all afraid of, is right now looking like the expert. And I appreciate your advice there. It is actually, that's something I use with my students, because some of them do come from the world of digital media. They have a certain subject matter expertise that we'll be talking about in class, and I want them to be that expert and give their advice on what's happening in the field right now, because I may be 2 years removed from whatever it is that they're working on.
Yeah, it's tough sometimes, right? It's leaders are there to lead and help make decisions and solve problems. But again, it's got to be balanced with creating a culture that allows other people to contribute. Even if Steve Jobs and not Steve Jobs, Bezos lately has been talking a lot in a lot of articles about how his biggest successes were hiring people who were smarter than him. Like, he wasn't afraid to not be the smartest one in the room. Being a leader is almost more about being a conductor. You don't have to know how to play the tuba. You don't know how to have to play the flute. You just have to keep them all in rhythm, right? That's what the conductor does in for an orchestra. And that's where you have to look at leadership.
Yeah. Well, I think we could dive into a lot more on leadership and certainly a lot more in discussion of the curious leader and all the different things that you're doing. But this is a really great place to leave the audience thinking through everything you've talked about so far. I want to ask everybody who's listening, where are you in your organization? But are you standardizing your operations and your workflows? And are you looking at how to create more efficiencies, but doing it with curiosity, as Jon is talking about?
Yeah. And to add on a few things on that is question, is your organization aligned? Is decision-making flowing properly? If, every CO I've ever worked, I think, has at some point, pointed out some problem or something and told the person who technically does that, like, hey, like this has been wrong. Like, I know it's been wrong. Right. And what always happens, they get mad at the employee. We need to start looking at ourselves. If your employees aren't speaking up because they know a better way to do it, or there's a problem that's existing, you need to look internally. So ask yourself, does my team bring me problems? Does my team bring me solutions? Am I creating an environment that allows it to happen regardless of hierarchy, department, whatever it may be, and truly allow everyone to play that participating role?
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, like I said, we're going to link people to your TED Talk and to the book. Jon, do you have a favorite quote, mantra, verse, poem, family motto?
Yeah, I tend to go with the Taoist philosopher Ted Lasso, and be curious, not judgmental. Because a lot of curiosity, if not done the right way, can seem as you're poking holes, right, and being derogatory or attacking. When really, when curiosity is done the right way, it doesn't invoke that judgment, right? It's truly being curious to help solve problems, and connect with other people, and work better.
I never really thought about Ted Lasso being the ultimate curious leader, but yeah, you are correct. And I know I'm one of the people who's looking forward to whenever they finally release another season. So, well, Jon, thank you so much. I am really inspired by the conversation we just had. I will say I haven't read the book yet, but I'm really excited to download it and read it myself. I think it's coming at the right time. We're getting towards the end of the year. There's a lot going on in the world, but one thing that we can always bring to the work that we're doing to make ourselves better and to think about innovative ways to do things is to bring curiosity to the table. So thank you for bringing that to us today.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Of course. Thank you to everybody who's watching this episode or listening to it. We appreciate you being here. Please leave a rating review, let your friends know about it, and look through Jon's resources. He has a lot to offer. And with that, I'll be back again with another amazing guest to share their story, their journey very soon. Have a beautiful day. Until then. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.